Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna put in the chat the link to the outlines that we have been and will continue to be using. Uh, Today is number 3, question and answer customization. Before we get into this, are there any questions about anything we've covered so far? Okay, then. Today we're going to go over what I call question and answer customization. Today will probably be a little bit short. I'm sure that does not bother you at all. Um, but what we'll be doing today, particularly with the piping, is something that will carry into the next couple of weeks. Especially when we do some of the logic next week, and especially the following week when we do survey flow and we're looking at embedded data and other things. So I started out just to make things a little bit easier today with a few questions here. The first thing we're going to talk about is called carry forward. And carry forward is when you want to ask a follow-up question based on the responses to a previous question. Excuse me. And so you can see here, I have one question that says, pick your 3 favorite ice cream flavors: vanilla, chocolate, ghost pepper, caribou slobber, and strawberry. Caribou slobber is a craft brew for home brewers. It's a brown ale. And then 2 more questions. Of those, which is your most favorite? And of the ones you did not pick, which is your least favorite? So of those, okay, my train of thought went right off the tracks there for a second. So you want to know, of the 3 that they picked in this one, which do they like the most? So you highlight the question. When you come over to the left here, and you come down to carry forward choices. See, this pops up. You can carry forward from whatever. Now, why it has questions that come after it, I don't know, because you can't carry forward from something that hasn't happened yet, but that's the way they do it. There are a few quirky things in Qualtrics, as you either have or will find out. So we're going to pick question 1, and then we'll go to selected choices, and you have a choice. All choices, which just repeats those 5. Displayed choices and not displayed choices. We're going to be talking about display logic next week, but you can, based on some criteria, you can either display or not display various choices. But we're going to, right now, there's selected choices and unselected. So we're going to pick selected choices, confirm. And now you see it says carry forward choices, and it has all the same choices, but you can see there's these little arrows to show that it's being taken from the previous question. And so we'll come down to this one, and you can carry forward from a carry forward, or you can carry forward different ones. So I'm going to come up here and do unselected choices. So let's look at the preview. And just for a quick moment here, The preview here is really very, very useful. You should be using it constantly. One thing is place bookmark. If you're well into your survey and you're testing it, and you have 4 or 5 pages of questions already, they work. When you go to the preview, it's going to start from the beginning by default. And so you don't want to have to keep going through all this stuff that you've already done. When you get to where you want to, like pick up, you can place a bookmark there. And then when you come back and preview again, you just go to the bookmark and it'll skip all the stuff that you've already done. And we'll see this in a minute. It doesn't make sense to put a bookmark on the first page. You can ignore any validation that you've put in. That can make your life a lot easier if you do have a lot of validation. You just want to get through the questions so that you can get to where you left off and where you need to really test your survey. Show hidden questions. That's showing everything, whether or not, even if with your display logic, it's being hidden from the respondent. So that's something you kind of have to remember, because if you're testing your display logic and you don't want it shown to your respondent and you go through this, it's going to show it to you, even if it's actually working correctly. So you have to come up here and uncheck that to make sure that your display logic is working correctly. View published version I've never used that because I usually sometimes you just have to publish it to get things saved and all set to make them work correctly. We'll see that more next week and the following week when you have to do that. And then scan QR code is just, you can get a QR code for your phone and try it out on your phone. You can see what it looks like on the phone. The other thing is share preview. If you're working, if you want feedback from somebody, say your advisor or colleague, you can use the share preview link and send that to them. Brand internal only means Syracuse University only. So only if they're logged in or have an SU email address, an SU Net ID, will they be able to see it. Public, of course, is exactly that. Anybody can see it, so long as they have the link to it. And these links can be pretty long, so it's not like somebody's going to guess it and start doing your survey. But that link that I just copied, somebody can just go in and send it to them. And they get to it. That can be really useful when you just want some feedback, but you don't want to have to give the person access within, make them a collaborator within Qualtrics itself. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pick vanilla, ghost pepper, and caribou slobber. And so as you can see, it just shows the 3 that I picked. So ghost pepper. And then of the ones that I didn't pick in the previous question is vanilla or caribou slobber. And we're going to talk about these in a minute, so I'm just going to put out of here. And so you can see how you can use the different selected, unselected, hidden, unhidden, and keep going. If you had, say, 30 original choices, this kind of thing could be pretty useful in winnowing it down for your respondents. And then you don't have to keep showing them all over again, which would probably really only end up confusing people. Now, what you may have noticed, and this is how Qualtrics works sometimes, is these 3 questions are all in the same block. Now, usually, all the questions in the same block are shown on the same web page. But as you can see, it's just the one. And then we go to the next, and it does it again. With other things, and we'll be seeing this, one question has to be in a different block because you need Qualtrics, you need the respondent to submit that answer so that Qualtrics knows what the answer is and can do its thing, to use the technical term. Well, we'll see these kinds of things as we go along. I just want you to kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we look at things. Okay, are there any questions about carry forward?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you have the first question where there's to select their 3 favorites.
Mhm.
The second one of those which you selected, which is your most favorite. Could the third question be of those you didn't pick from that first question, which is your least favorite? So you're getting the number 1 and the number 5. Can you do it that way?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And so, vanilla, ghost, and strawberry. See, now you see it's a little bit different because I had it go, these 2 questions are based off that very first one.
Okay.
So Qualtrics knows by the time it gets here which were selected and which were not. In the previous example, this last question was based on the second one. So it didn't know which ones you didn't select until you hit the submit button.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Piping. I mentioned this a little bit last week. And piping is a way of creating dynamic text based on the information gathered in your survey. You can do all kinds of things. You can get information from a previous survey question. An embedded data field, this is something we're going to talk about the week after next. But the principles and code and kinds of things that we're doing today will be used then as well. You can put in an IP code, the links that your survey came from or are going to. Date and time stamps. So if you want the current date and time to be displayed to your, excuse me, your respondent, you can do that. And then they even have, you know, next year, next month, different kinds of, I guess, calculations that they've already done for you. The opt-out link, that's, you know, an unsubscribe kind of link. You can create random numbers. We might talk about this when we do survey flow. Panels field, as I think I mentioned, a panel is also called a contact list, which is now called a directory. 3 different names for the same thing. Loop and merge we'll talk about next week maybe, or the week after. And then quotas is how you can restrict the number of people answering your survey. You can also do mathematical operations with piped text. So here I have 2 questions. What is your height and what is your weight? Ostensibly, you're going to ask people for their, you're going to calculate their BMI. And so these are 2 text questions, and we're going to come down and you see how I put this in another block. And this is one of those instances where the question needs to be in a different block because Qualtrics needs to know what the person's answers were to these 2. So if you're just going to put, you know, let's say a date timestamp in, it's going to show this just for funsies right now. You see this code here. You can just go ahead and do it like I just did. You don't want to mess with this code. If you're just displaying it to your respondents. Of course, what we want is the answers to previous questions. So as you say, depending on the type of question, you get all kinds of choices. Again, displayed, not displayed, selected, unselected, selected choices, recode if you did recode values. And then what is your height? Question text is exactly that. It will return what is your height. But what you want is this one, which is the actual response. It would be nice if they said, you know, response instead of just the question. I'll put that in there. Then we're going to get the code for the weight. Now, to actually get the person's BMI, you need to do a calculation with this. And I strongly suggest when you do the calculations, well, what was that? That you do it in a text editor, whether it's Word or Google Docs, however you want to do it, because it's much easier to edit in Word or Google Docs than it is to edit in here. Sometimes, especially when you start doing embedded data, you get this little teeny tiny text box to enter your information in, and it's next to impossible to see everything. So let's take a little bit of a look. All the codes look like this. Q1 ID 4, question 4, choice text entry value. Responses to questions will all kind of look like this. It'll have this first part as the same, and then the second part will be a little bit different if it's a text response or multiple choice. But as is, we have to do a little bit of editing with these to turn it into a usable mathematical operation. So first thing you need to do is put an E. Take out this middle curly brace, a space, plus sign. Take out this dollar and curly brace, and then should be good to go. Now the spacing in here between the codes and the operators is important. There needs to be a space, the operator, and space. If you jam it all together, Qualtrics will throw an error, but it won't tell you there's an error. It simply won't display the value, and it will be very difficult sometimes to figure out what is actually wrong. So I'm going to replace this. Go to preview. Now, obviously, that formula that I put in is not the correct formula for BMI. So here, let's see, I'll put in 100. See? So it does that nice calculation for you. I'm going to go back and purposely do something wrong, just so you can see. See, I left that last thing, that last curly brace out. Again, this is where the bookmark can come in handy. You don't have to keep clicking through all of this. Place bookmark. Now you see, go to bookmark, and I'll show you in a second. And by just taking out that last curly brace, it just has an error. And sometimes this will be completely blank. You know, if you see this, you can say, oh, I'm missing that curly brace at the end. But if it's just blank, it's like, okay, what's going on here? So you sometimes have to do it a couple of times. That's life in the big city. We'll put that back in. In these calculations here, you can also, so you could do, you can use parentheses. Let's say. See, invalid expression. Well, it's nicer than when it's just blank. So it didn't like something. Of course, it doesn't tell you what it didn't like. Okay, obviously, I would need to go back even myself and see what the correct syntax for something like that would be. I thought I had it here. But as you can see, sometimes you just need to, uh, keep trying, keep fiddling with it a little bit. On that question and answer customization, I have a link to the Qualtrics help page for doing these kinds of things, because there's a lot of other I guess, information and ways of doing things with this that you can do more so, obviously, than I'm just showing you here. We'll get a little bit more into these kinds of things next week and the following week, as I mentioned. One thing I want to say is with calculating something this way, it will be displayed to your respondent, and you can use it in subsequent parts of your survey, but it will not be saved with your data. Once you download your data, you'll have, height and weight, because those are specific questions. But this calculation that you've done for BMI or whatever else will not be saved with your data. Now, it's not a big deal because you have height and weight. You can always create a new variable in SPSS or Excel that calculates that for you. If you want that information saved with the data, then you need to create what's known as an embedded data field. And we'll be doing that the week after next. And sometimes you need to do the embedded data field if you want to use that information later on. Or like in this instance, we're just displaying BMI, but you might want people over a certain BMI to answer some questions and people under a certain BMI to answer other questions. And in that case, you'll need to do that in the survey flow, and you'll need to create the embedded data field to do that. But you create the embedded data field using the same kind of syntax. Are there any questions about that? It's probably kind of scratch your head a little bit, but you'll see as we go along how this kind of thing can be really very, very useful in making a nice survey for the respondents. Okay, since we're down here, I want to show you some of the things at the end. If you see here, they call this the trash, and these are questions that I started and then deleted. Qualtrics won't actually just absolutely throw away your questions. Anytime you delete something from above, it comes down here to the trash. And say you decide, oh no, I want that question. I just need to, change a little something and it's still good. You can just click on it and then come up here to restore. And you'll get that question back in your survey. Or of course, you can click permanently delete, and that's what it means, permanently deleted. Which is the same thing as empty trash, except it permanently deletes everything in there. So that can be kind of nice, because now, you don't have to necessarily redo a question that you decide you want to keep anyhow. This other thing here, end of survey. This is the default end of survey. At the end of the survey, this is what your respondents will see. If you come over here to the messaging, that's the default. You can make a custom message. You can redirect them to another web page, or you can include what they call a response summary, which is a summary of all their answers. This can be nice, if they took some kind of a test, or want them to be able to print out their answers. That's an easy way to do it. You just display them and say, okay, now, you can print this page out for your records. Redirect to the URL. This can be useful if you're getting preliminary information in Qualtrics, and then you want to send them to another website that has some other kind of survey. There's a lot of nutrition surveys out there that people can take. It's also good if you have, if you're sending it out via an anonymous link, which we'll talk about when we do distributions. If you want to be able to contact your respondents afterwards, you can ask them at the end of your anonymous survey, are you willing to provide contact information so we can get back to you? If they say yes, then it redirects them to another survey, a completely different Qualtrics survey, where they can enter their contact information. And their contact information is kept separate from their survey answers. So the survey answers are still anonymous. And custom can be fun too, because you can put all kinds of things in there. Different messages that you've already created, and you create a new one. And of course, Qualtrics has some. So let's just that. So there's all kinds of things that you can put in that ending message. These things, this custom end of survey message, is also part of the survey flow. This end of survey is the default that everybody will see. So if you don't want anything special, it's okay that everybody sees the same end of message, you can do it here. What's nice about doing it in the survey flow is that you can have different end of survey for different people. You can do the branching, which we'll see in a couple of weeks when we actually do survey flow. You can do some really intricate, cool kinds of things in the survey flow. I think that's about all I needed to get through today. Are there any questions? About what we've done today, what we've done previously? anything that you're working on currently that's got you perplexed. Okay, then, I will see everyone next week at same bat time, same bat station. Have a good week, everybody, and if you have questions during the week, feel free to contact me and we'll get you going. All right, take care, everyone.